Hi, everyone. My name is Sarry Ibrahim, and you are listening to Real Conversations with Sheeta and Nikki, and I'm today's featured guest. Now, let's get into it.
Lunch breaks, outtakes, we know how to vibe. Interviews, twos, latest news. Read your comments too. What are you thinking? Ooh, have lunch with us too. Conversations with you. Real conversations with Sheeta and Nikki. Real conversations with Sheeta and Nikki. Yeah. Real conversations with Sheeta.
Hello, everyone. We are excited to welcome our featured guest, Mr. Sarry Ibrahim. Sarry is a financial specialist, real estate investor, and member of the Bank on Yourself organization.
Sarry will help our listeners get a better understanding of financial wealth, life insurance, and so much more. Welcome to the show.
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yes. So, Sarry, do you want to just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So, I'm from Chicago, Illinois, born and raised here, and I run a company called Financial Asset Protection. We're a financial services firm. We help clients in pretty much all 50 states, anywhere. We help them with saving for retirement, solving financial problems, starting a business, transitioning from full-time employment into their own business. Pretty much, we want to kind of tackle any financial problems they're having, and also seeking financial opportunities too. And yeah, we've been in business for about six years now. And this journey kind of started off a little bit unusual for me. My background was more in insurance. I worked for a couple of different insurance companies, mostly in sales and marketing. And as I was dealing with a lot of people, I noticed that I kind of was connecting with people more so on a financial coaching level, not just on an insurance level. People became very comfortable talking to me about money. I was comfortable talking to people about money, and I want to make a career out of this. So this is what kind of led to starting financial asset protection and helping people kind of solve those financial issues that they're having.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
So, what do you say to the people who say that, I have a hard time saving, I don't have the money to save, I can't really do anything like that right now? What advice would you give to those listeners? Oh,
Oh,
you,
you
you went
muted.
you went out.
It all starts with like a process, not just like, you don't need to, for example, it's like saying I want to get into better shape so that I'm going to go running. uh,
Mhm.
by saying that somebody can't spend is like saying I can't go running right now because I'm out of shape. Well, we're running to get into shape. And then same thing
Right.
with financial, solving some financial struggles you're having, is that you don't need money to save money. You know what I mean? So like
Mhm.
you just have to change the process of it. You're saving money so that way you can solve the problem in the future. So and a lot of it has a lot to do with mindset. Also, paying yourself first. There's actually a
Mhm.
concept called profit first, which explains how people need to pay themselves first, because people could have all the bills, all the expenses, and they'll make all those bills and expenses every month, but then at the end of the
Mhm.
month, surprise, they don't have any money for themselves. And a lot of that has to do with because they simply didn't pay themselves first and didn't kind of budget up properly. So I think that changing the mindset has a lot to do with it. Learning about concepts like paying yourself first and profit first helps a lot. I also think that kind of putting yourself in a situation where you're almost like in a forced savings plan, where
Mhm.
it's like a monthly draft every month. Let's just say $300 or $500 a month automatically comes out every month. You're already committed. You've already said, yes, I'm going to do this. Yes, I'm going to commit to this much money per month. It's already coming out of your checking account on auto draft. There's not
Mhm.
much you could really do to stop it. There are some obstacles actually in the way to stop it. I really like those types of plans because it makes people prioritize savings now. Now it's not really optional anymore. It's like a bill now.
Mhm.
That it's almost like an expense, even though it's going into another savings account or some sort of investment vehicle. I really like those vehicles because it forces us to save. And then something happens, something surprising happens with us as people when we've already committed to something and we've already started paying into it. Now we start to revolve around that instead of figuring out ways to stop that, or to interfere with that. We're going to keep that going now, and then try to solve other things. So I think really when people have a hard time saving, it's more so that they don't believe it's possible, and they just they haven't committed to anything really. They haven't taken any leaps. And I think that those leaps and those commitments are really important. You have to kind of make the bet on yourself, kind of put the commitment out there, and then try to figure out a way to commit to that.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned something earlier that was a bit interesting. You said that you help individuals that are working full time to working starting their own business or working for themselves.
Yeah.
So you mentioned mindset as well. So somebody that's been working full time for years, how do you kind of adjust or get them to adjust from working like a 9 to 5 to now they don't really have a schedule, but they still they want to work for themselves? How do they adjust, or how do you help them to adjust?
Yeah, absolutely.
Full time to now they're entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so it would definitely depend on what they were doing before, and then what they're going to do now as self-employed individuals. What business are they starting? That would help a lot, if I knew that. But in general, I would kind of recommend that people transition more from their subject matter expertise now into almost as financial experts. So, for example, you are a social worker. You work for a company, you work for an organization, you want to branch off, start your own practice where you are the owner of the practice. Now you kind of have to, in a sense, take off your social worker hat and put on your financial mind hat, where you're the CFO of the company, you're the CEO of the company. You need to make financial decisions now. That is going to be more important than the underlying social work activities. Why? Well, because number one, you're going to be responsible. There's no HR department, there's no payroll department, there's no accounting department. You are all those departments. And then the financial impact is going to have more of a change, or more of an effect on the overall business and how it runs. Plus, you don't want to really go from working in a company to starting a business that's very similar to the company you worked at. In other words, you're just changing jobs, really. If you're a social worker at an organization, then you transition into your own business, and then you're doing all the social work stuff, just like how you were before. There was no really change there. But if you left your, for example, job as a social worker, and then now you start your own practice, and then you can hire social workers. This is where the CFO, CEO mindset comes in, is you're duplicating yourself. You're not working in your business, you're working on your business. That's just one example. Again, this could vary for a lot of people and their skills and what they're doing before. But I think the overall thing to take away from this is that there's a difference between the subject matter expertise you have and then the running the business aspect. Like, for example, imagine you have a chef who's really, really good at cooking, and then that chef is going to start his or her own business. Now they are more of business owners. They're more business owners.
Yeah.
They're going to be more involved in the math of the business, the financial part, the accounting part, than they are in the food. Their employees will be managing the food, the food part, how it tastes, how it looks. That's all going to be handled by the employees of the business. The owner is going to hire those people, train those people, make sure the money in and money out of the business is being held properly, and then hopefully earn much more money doing that as an owner rather than being an employee.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had to kind of switch it up, change your mindset a bit.
You have to
be the owner instead of just the employee.
Yeah, and a lot of people make this mistake where they're really good at cooking, so they want to start their own restaurant, or they're really good at, if they're a social worker, they're really good with their job and they want to start their own business, or they're really good, lawyers. They're very good lawyers, but they want to start their own practice. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. The leap from your job into your own practice is not really dependent on how good you are at your actual subject matter expertise. It's dependent on how good you are at running a business. I know it's counterintuitive, but it's different. For example, what tastes better, a burger made by one of the best chefs in the world, or McDonald's, probably the one that's made by one of the best chefs, but McDonald's is much better at running a business than they are at making burgers. That's what's more important.
Yeah,
that is true.
Yeah, totally.
McDonald's is definitely better because their food is not good, but it's like the lines are always long, which I don't
Yeah.
understand.
They're very good at business. Yeah, they know what they're
Yeah,
doing.
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it for sure.
Mhm.
So you mentioned that you're a member of the Bank on Yourself
Yeah.
organization. So can you
Yeah.
kind of explain to our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was an organization created by Pamela Yellen. It was originally introduced in her book, The Bank on Yourself Revolution. So that's how I found out about the organization and the concept. I used to do a lot of research. I still do a lot of research. I have to part of my job. I have to constantly research different financial things and topics and methods. And I was on Amazon searching for finance books, and I got recommended The Bank on Yourself Revolution by Pamela Yellen. So I
Mm-hmm.
bought the book, read it, and I actually read it like really quickly. It was like a 300-page book, but it was so intriguing and so like easy to read that I read it quickly. And the book talks about this concept, the bank on yourself concept. It's a way for one to become his or her own to become their own bank, or in a sense, not an actual literal bank, but more of the mindset. You're thinking like a bank,
Okay.
and then a way to kind of hedge against market risks, hedge against inflation, kind of protect yourself financially. The book talks heavily about how people use mutual funds and 401ks and IRAs and all these vehicles that everyone else is using, and the problems with those vehicles. So I liked the content in the book. It was really interesting. I connected with the content. And then at the end of the book, there was a section that said, if you'd like to join our organization to help other people with this concept, you can apply at this link. So I went to that link, I applied, I got accepted into the program. It's a program of about 200 advisors in North America that help people with the bank on yourself concept. They write books and they do podcasts, and luckily I'm one of those people. And that led to our podcast called Thinking Like a Bank. So the podcast is heavily focused around the bank on yourself concept.
Okay.
That's great. Yeah. I think that's very much needed, because I know I'm someone that I find like financial things, it's hard for me to save. I've said that in previous episodes. So I am getting a little bit older now. So I liked what you were talking about earlier, just taking that money out when you first get your check or whatever, and then
Yeah.
just having it come into the savings. I think that's like just a great idea, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I do that too. Like
Okay.
I take out a little whenever I get my check, I have it go, like a portion of it goes to another account, and I don't touch that
Yeah.
account. It may not be, I'm trying to let it build up, but I'm at least trying to just start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's key right there. Starting somewhere is the most important thing, because a lot of people want to do so much. They get like analysis paralysis, or they want to do so much research. They want to make sure it's going to be the perfect savings method or the perfect investment opportunity or the perfect thing, and really doesn't have to be perfect at all. The most important thing is that you start. You just have a mindset. All right, I'm starting another account. I'm gonna put. I'm gonna commit. Even taking a step further, like finding a savings account that doesn't let you do an early withdrawal without a penalty, something like that. And I get it. It might be scary for some people to put themselves in that situation, but really, and I've both on the podcast and in our business, I've dealt with a lot of wealthy individuals, and it's almost like I get to see what's going on in their minds. And one common trait I see with wealthy individuals is they're constantly putting themselves in a very tight situation, where it's almost like, I don't know if I could do this or not, but I want to, because the outcome is going to be so much better than not doing it at all. That's their mindset. They're taking the leap before even looking. Yes, they are logical. They do the math before certain things, but at the end of the day, they're taking leaps. They're without even committing to it yet. They're going to say, I'll say yes to this project or yes to this investment, and then I'll figure out how I'm going to commit to it.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people think the other way around.
Yeah.
Like they have to have like that plan, like planned out first, and then say, okay, I'm gonna do this. But you're kind of saying the smarter way to think about it is kind of just taking that leap, trusting your instinct, and then just believing that those steps will play out.
Exactly. You have to believe in yourself. 80%, probably 90% of success is you telling yourself that you could do something. It's you believing in yourself, you betting on yourself. That you could do something. The other 10 to 15%, the smaller amount, is only going to be, your degree, the amount of money you start with, your credit, your network, all those things that are outside of your life. But the vast majority is internal. It's you believing in yourself and you taking control and you betting on yourself. If somebody came to you and said, could you make $1 million in the next 10 years? If yes, you'll get another $1 million as a bet. If no, you have to pay. If the answer is you won't take that bet on it, then you don't believe in yourself. So you have to be able to take that bet on yourself and take that leap. And because nothing else is really going to help you out. Nothing, no book out there, no, course or college degree or job or boss or anything like that's going to help you as much as you can help yourself.
Yeah. It definitely starts with yourself for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you are your first step.
Yeah, definitely. Because a lot of people, they're scared to fail,
Yes.
they're scared of, oh, I'm gonna fail or it's not gonna work. But if you look at so many people that have been in business, they've said that they have failed, but they still kept trying. You know what I'm saying? There's a lesson to learn from that. Like, you have to be willing, like how you said, a bet on yourself. If it fails, then you start again, or you revamp what you already are doing and say, how can I make this work?
Yeah. You have to believe in yourself.
Yeah, it's like Thomas Edison said, he didn't fail 10,000 times before he created the light bulb. He just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. So it's kind of the very similar mentality to entrepreneurship, and to not even entrepreneurship, but anything that you want to accomplish in your life. The failure is just one step closer to the thing that you want. It's not necessarily going to stop you from getting there. It's actually going to advance. It's going to help you get there. Because even if you, for example, ran a business, you started a business, you invested in it, you lost money, it didn't work out, you still gained a lot more things than you would have not doing it at all. And those things that you gained could be leveraged and could be used again and could be recycled for other tools and other places in your life. And then eventually you will get there. Eventually you'll get to those things. I think that you're right. People do fear failure because they don't truly understand what failure is. They fear failure because they're looking at it from, for example, from like an academic point of view, right? In school, you get an F, for example, in a class, you're trained that's on your report card. It's there with you, throughout your academic career. So you want to avoid that. You want to get to an A or B or C, or at the lowest point. You don't want any Fs on your report card. And then we take that mentality and then we bring that with us into the real world, right? And I'm thinking, for example, I want to start this business, but I don't want to fail because I don't want an F on my report card. We might not be thinking about this consciously, but this goes on in a lot of people's minds. They're looking at the failure as if it's like an F on the report card. When in reality, it's the complete opposite of that. Not taking those leaps and not taking those chances in life will actually create more problems for you in your life.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely true. It's all about the mindset for sure. So what are some like simple ways, I guess, people can invest, or some simple ways that people can kind of start thinking like a bank?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. So I guess the basics is like steps, like the first steps is leverage as much free content as you can. Like, listen to podcasts like this, listen to our podcast, Thinking Like a Bank, check out free books, free ebooks, like absorb as much free content as you can. And then after that, start investing into yourself. Buy some books, buy some courses. I think that you get the highest return on your investment when you invest in yourself. And then third, I would look at some I want to say common investments, but not necessarily trendy investments. And what that means is, for example, real estate. Real estate is a common investment. It's secured by the underlying asset, the actual property. But I don't recommend. In my opinion, I don't like trendy investments. That's where, like, for example, everybody's doing this one investment, so you should do it too. I think they're not necessarily that secure because they're just dependent on the trend. They're dependent on a lot of people, other people doing them. But I would look for example, I'm a really big fan of real estate investing. And luckily, in the year 2022, as we're recording this, for example, 10 years ago, in order to do real estate, you had to have a lot of money. You had to be able to qualify for banks. You kind of had to have a lot of leverage and know what you're doing to get into real estate investing. Today, as of today, you can get into real estate investing with a few $100s. There's so many apps out there, like third party. So like I think Fundrise is one of them. You could invest. I don't know what the minimum is, but you can invest with a few $100s. And there's other, they're called REITs, real estate investment trusts. There's also real estate limited partnerships, like syndications, that you can get into. There are some ways where you can invest in real estate with as little as $5,000 or $10,000. So in other words, you don't need to be a multimillionaire to get into real estate investing or other types of investments. So I would look for those. I like alternative investments. Alternative investments means investments outside of the stock market, outside of Wall Street. outside of
Yeah.
your 401ks, IRAs, mutual funds, kind of different from those, typically referring to real estate or private businesses. Like there are ways where you can invest in apps that haven't hit the market yet. They're still kind of in their testing phase. You could
Mm.
buy like shares of them, like little shares of those companies. They're private. And then once
Yeah.
the company launches and makes a lot of money, your shares could go up. There's so many different ways. And if you reach out to us and schedule an intro call with us, I can kind of show you some different ways of
Yeah.
finding these sites and learning how to understand them and how you can invest with minimal money into these platforms.
Yeah. Yeah. I think now it is a little bit easier, like you
Yeah.
said, to get into real estate or investing. I think it's just like, I just think it's the not many people know that these apps and these quicker, I guess, these avenues are out
Yeah.
there for
Yeah.
them to take advantage of. So I think that's kind of where the gap is, because it's not a lot of people that know that um uh these investment tools are out there for them to use.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Exactly.
good
Yeah.
to know. Yeah, that's good to know that there are, quicker ways or other options out there, and you don't need, a whole bunch of money, to start. All you need is just that dream, and like we said, believing in yourself,
Mhm.
and taking that leap of faith.
100%. Yeah. There's definitely a big education gap. There's a gap between, not knowing not knowing, first of all, these sites even exist or these platforms exist. And
Mm-hmm.
then not knowing how to use them, because a lot of people will find these sites, right? They'll click on them, they'll go there, but they won't implement, they won't take the next step. So yeah, there's definitely a big gap between that. I think that having like a financial coach or somebody to help you out makes a big difference as well. Somebody to kind of help you find your inner light, your inner,
Mm-hmm.
power. That helps a lot. It's helped me a lot in my business. I've worked with about 5 different coaches and mentors in my life, and it's definitely been a big part of it. Again, it starts with you believing in yourself, you trusting yourself, you betting on yourself, but having a coach also helps amplify that. It helps kind of take that to the next
Yeah.
step. And coaching is very, for those of you who don't know, coaching is very powerful, because coaching isn't somebody telling you what to do. Coaching is somebody helping you find your inner power, finding that inner courage where you're thinking, you're not asking somebody, how do I do this? Somebody's asking you, if you were to do this, how would you do it? And then
Mm-hmm.
you're creating this engine of thinking, of believing in yourself. And then I think I strongly recommend that. And the same is true with financial planning. I think having a coach with you, somebody who can show you these platforms, show you how to screen these investments, show you how to make sure it's going to be a good investment.
Right.
It's gonna, and then ultimately you're taking the leap. This is nobody telling you what to do. It's you believing that this is going to be a good move. This aligns with my beliefs and my core beliefs, and this is I'm gonna implement this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important. Because there are a lot of like business scams out there.
Yeah, yeah, for
So,
sure.
like, how would people even know which ones are legit and which ones aren't?
Yeah, somebody actually texted me yesterday. A client texted me, and it was like a website from like somewhere across on the other side of the world. And I looked at the address, and everything about it was just kind of like there was a lot of grammar mistakes in the website. And I just Googled, is this a scam? And there's some websites that came up that said this company is a scam. So I would look. I mean, I would only, there are so many ways to find out if it's a trusted website. Right now in the marketplace, out of the billions of websites there are only like 3 or 4 like legit websites. Like one of them, Fundrise, and a couple other ones as of today. So, I would only go with some of the more common ones, plus Google them, plus check out their website. Are there grammar mistakes in their website? Check out kind of references. And then also there has to be like logic to the investments. Like if somebody says invest in this platform and you put $500 in and then you get $5,000 next week, that sounds really, number one, the return on the investment is astronomical. That's 10
Mm-hmm.
times your money in 7 days or whatever, or in 5 days. That's a not even the biggest companies in America, the biggest hedge funds, the biggest investment companies could even get those returns. So how could you get those returns? Number one. And then number
Right.
two, ask, like, what is that? Like, I'm giving you $500. Okay, what are you going to do with that money? Are you going to invest it in a private business? If so, what is that business? What does that business do? How will that business use that money to make more money? How will they make more money? You know what I mean? Like kind of go deeper into the thinking of like what is happening. Don't just look at it as like a machine where you're putting money to a machine and the machine is printing more money for you. That's not how
Right.
investments work, right?
Right.
People are collecting money and they're doing things. For example, here's like a legitimate like that I've seen. People will raise like $2 million. Like each person will put like $50,000 into a pot of like a syndication. They'll raise all that money, $2 million. They'll go and they'll buy a property for like $8 million. They'll use that 2 million as a down payment. And they'll finance the rest of it. Now we're talking about a real building with a real address that's actually listed for sale with a real bank that's going to give a $6 million loan with $2 million down, with the leaders of the group actually having legitimate credentials. There could be SEC filing, like government filing, where you can cross-reference that with the government. All the funds are going to be wire transferred, paper trail. There's going to be contracts. Everybody has their own contracts that they could review. There's a lot of legitimate steps in place. It's not just I'm giving these random people money and they're going to go invest in and give me a return back. No, there's a lot of steps in between there that help make everything legitimate and help you screen whether it's legitimate or not.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing. Everyone always thinks there's a lot of scams out here, and
Yeah.
that's why it's definitely important to go and do your research and make sure you hook up with someone that is legit. So
Yeah.
You're right. There are a lot of scams out there, but luckily there's also a lot of resources to judge whether those are scams or not.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, I think-
Thank goodness for Google.
I think something too that I want the audience to walk away with, right? It's like the quality of your questions is the quality of your life, right? So like if you want, a better life, ask good questions, ask a lot of questions. So if you're in these situations, right, where you're in an investment opportunity, ask, make a list of as many questions as you possibly can. Even if you may seem annoying or kind of like, you're asking too many questions, good. Like, because the more questions you ask, the more things you learn about that. And the more things you learn about that, the more likely you are to find a good deal or a bad deal or whatever the case is. So questions lead our life, really.
Right. Yeah. Questions are important. So, what about like parents or younger teens or parents that want to get their teens or their children into investing or thinking like a bank at a young age? Like, what are some tips, I guess, that the younger generation can kind of start doing now so that when they get older, they're more established or they have that financial foundation?
Yeah, so there's something called the Rule of 72. So the Rule of 72 is something I think invented by Albert Einstein. It's like a math tip or math like method. So what you do is, for example, let's just say that you were going to earn a 5% rate of return on your money. So like wherever you invested your money, you were going to get 5% of that annualized back to you compounded. Now the question is, how many years will it take you to double your money if you invested in something that was earning you 5%? You could take out a financial calculator and you could solve it the long way. There's also a formula that you could do on paper. Or you could just take the number 72 and then divide it by 5. And then that gives you 14.4. So that means that every 14.4 years, your money will double. So what that means is, imagine if you're young, right? If you're 18 years old and you have, 70 years ahead of you, imagine what that could do for your business portfolio, your investment portfolio. Is if you had all that time. So young people have the biggest advantage of everyone is because they have the most time. Whereas if somebody's in their 70s and they want to start investing, which I've seen before, who knows when you're going to go, right? Who knows when you're going to, leave this earth, but you don't have that much time. Let's face it, you don't have that much time to invest and double your money and compound it over time. So younger people have the biggest advantage of everyone. They have the most time ahead of them. So that's the first thing I would teach kids, is teach them that, about the Rule of 72, how you could double your money every so often based off of the rate of return you're receiving. And then you have the most time to implement that. And to go further into this rule, it's actually very interesting because let's just say you were earning 5% on your money, right? If you put $10,000 into this example, so $10,000 invested at 5%, 14.4 years later, you'll have $20,000, right? It doubled.
Mhm.
And then 14.4 years later, after that, you'll have 40,000. And then 14.4 years after that, you'll have 80,000. So it goes from 10, 20, 40, 80, 160, and so on.
Mhm.
And then it even amplifies more when you add more to it, because let's just say you did 10,000, it doubled, and then let's just say you add another $100 a month on top of that. Then it's going to double even more. It's going to compound even more, greater and greater. This is the power of compound interest. I would teach this to kids and get them working. Like teenagers could make $100 a week. They could, they could make $100 a day nowadays with today's minimum wage rate and all the jobs that are hiring. So yeah, for a teenager to add $100 a month or $100 a week or $100 a month into some sort of account that's going to give them some growth, I think it's very possible. And I would give the teenagers the freedom to do the research on it, to come up with it, not just tell them do this or do that. Give them the freedom to think, almost like as if they had a class, right? Like unfortunately, classes don't teach us. We'll take algebra and geometry and all these courses, but we won't learn about how to, the rule of 72 and how to double your money every, so often.
Right.
So that's what I would do. That's what I would recommend, is teach the rule of 72 and double your money.
Right. Sounds good. So what kind of accounts are there that would give you that compound interest to where you can double it every few years?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of different platforms and different ways to do it. As mentioned, the real estate platforms nowadays, you can invest in real estate with a few $100s. Before you weren't able to do that. So it's also called crowdfunding. Like a crowdfunding, a crowdfunding usually started off with, like, I think GoFundMe was one of the first crowdfunding sites. This is where like people would just like donate money, right, for a cause or for an event or something that happened. People would donate, like, I think as little as like $10 and as much as they wanted until they reached their goal. And then that way of raising money, crowdfunding, from a lot of people was transitioned into businesses and real estate. So now businesses and real estate could raise money for their businesses with just like $10 or $15 from a lot of people. So there are some rules. It might be $100 minimum, but I think that overall a lot of people can invest a very small amount of money. So I would look for crowdfunding business opportunities. I would even Google that. And again, if you do Google that, work with somebody, a coach, an advisor, somebody who's gonna walk you through this, and kind of help you out with this and give you kind of like the methods of how to screen these opportunities. Because again, there are a lot of scams out there, but there are also a lot of ways to judge those scams and to filter those out. So yeah, crowdfunding is a very powerful way for a lot of people to get involved in some sort of concept or business with a minimal investment.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. I wish I would have knew that.
Yeah, they don't. Like he said, they don't teach that in school. They teach you algebra and, but they don't teach you those specific things of how to earn compound interest or what type of accounts. Because nowadays, some people are like pulling their money out of like banks because the interest rate is so low that they're, putting it into other accounts like a Fidelity or, things like that. Because you can earn more interest or, save your money better with those type of accounts versus like bank accounts. So, yeah.
No, 100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, banks' interest rates nowadays are really low. Even with interest rates climbing, as we are, mid 2022, interest rates are climbing, but not savings account in banks. So you can do a lot more money with your money outside of banks, invested in different places. And then to take it even a step further, your money is actually losing power, right? Because if your money is sitting in the bank, right, and the inflation right now, if you go to Google and you search I bond, like the letter I and then bond, it stands for inflation bond or inflation protected bond. And what that is that it's a bond that matches the current inflation rate. And I Googled it today, actually right before I got on this podcast, and it's 9.62%. So that means that the current inflation rate as of today is 9.62%. This means that in general, the cost of things are increasing at 9.62%, one of the highest rates it's been in over 40 years. So if your money is sitting in the bank earning you, let's just say 0.25%, 0.25%, and everything is going up to inflation is 9.62%, you're actually losing money. That $10,000 you have in the bank or the $5,000 you have in the bank
Yeah.
is actually, it's losing value every day because the cost of things outside of the bank are going up. So how do you fix that problem? You fix that problem by having your money sitting in places that go up with inflation. This is where this is how the wealthy, this is how the rich get richer, right? When inflation happens, they make more money. They, because the cost of everything is going up. They own businesses where their costs, their prices are also rising. Their revenue is rising, their profits are rising along with inflation. So you need to figure out, and real estate is really good with this. Typically, real estate is positively correlated with inflation, meaning that when the cost of things go up, so does real estate. So when you own real estate, that's a really good hedge against inflation. And then also other businesses too. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind, where it's that not doing anything at all is also a problem. You're not doing something is also doing something.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's good to know. I didn't know about the iBond website where
Yep.
you can see exactly the percentage of inflation.
Yes.
So that's good to know for sure. So what do you say to people that want to save now, but we're in this like
Recession.
Yeah.
period
Yeah.
period where they feel like they can't save because gas is $6 and
Yeah.
groceries is this amount. Like, what do you say to people that just feel like, everything is so costly? How can I really save?
So I've done probably, I want to say like 500 meetings in the course of our business, where we do like financial analysis meetings, like where we're going through somebody's, how much money they make, how much money they paid in taxes last year, how much their expenses are, their rent, their mortgage, their property taxes, all these different expenses, and how much money they make and how much money they have in investment accounts, and pretty much everything related to their financial lives we go through. I've done that about 500 times, those meetings, and then I would say about 90% of those meetings, so well over 400 of those 500, well over 450 of those 500 meetings have people say, I've never done this before. I've never gone through all of these figures and all of these numbers and kind of looked at it from this perspective and seen it this way. So I would say, if you're listening to this podcast, there's a 90% chance that you probably haven't done that either, that you haven't gone through everything that you make, everything that you spend, and then what you do with that difference. So there's a very good chance that people could save, they just don't know it. They haven't gone through all those figures. They haven't seen it really analytically and kind of looked at it from a bird's eye view and seen it that way. So I would recommend you do that first. Look at everything. Talk to a coach about the weekend. We do this all day long, so we can help you kind of look at, and we do this for free too. We do we have a free consultation, and we show you how we can look at all your numbers for free. And I can almost guarantee that we can find extra money to save.
Wow. Nice. Yeah, and I think it starts with something just as simple as cutting out the fast food. Like some people go there every day, McDonald's or whatever the case. Just myself.
Why she talking about herself? I'm like, what you talking?
But you do spend a lot of money eating out. You don't realize how much money is really spent on this food. And we were just talking about this not too long ago. Like, if you go to McDonald's, you used to could get like a meal for like $4 or $5. Now you're gonna spend about $10 or $12 just for one meal.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So
that's that inflation he was talking about, 9.2%.
Yes. Woo. Yes, I have learned so much today. So I'm gonna start my saving soon, though. I've got to. So
yeah, it is important to save for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it creates more options. It creates more leverage for you in the future when you have cash to fall back on, and it kind of gives you more freedom, right, to do more things in life. I think that's what really it's all about, is having more options, more freedom. It's not just about I want more money, just like vaguely I want more money. It's more of I want more freedom. I want to be able to do more things on my own time. Because think about it, right? If you were leaving your job to go to starting your own business, why are you starting your own business? Well, for a lot of people, it's so that way they can live life on their own terms. Well, that's not free, right? Because you need a successful business to do so. And in order to have a successful business, you need reserves, you need cash flow coming
Mhm.
in. You constantly need to be able to tap into that fuel to keep the business
Yeah.
going. And then once the business is launched, then you can now live the life you truly want. So save. So in other words, saving does create more freedom for you. Saving your money and compounding it over time and having it grow for you could be the reason why you don't go to work anymore, why you don't need an alarm clock in the morning anymore.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Because I had another question because you mentioned about like investment and how easy it is to invest and real estate investment. How important is like your credit when it comes to investing? Like, does
yeah,
that even play a part in investing or just the cash
I think
plays a part?
initially, credit has a big impact on your ability to leverage money and to use that money for investment things. And it kind of brings into the question of, or the subject of good debt versus bad debt, right? So
Hmm.
good debt helps you make money with debt. It helps you borrow money and then be able to make more money with that. And then bad debt does the opposite. Bad debt costs you a lot of money. It actually hurts your financial portfolio. It hurts yourself when you have
Hmm.
bad debt. For example, an example of good debt is typically a mortgage, right? A mortgage used to be really low interest rates. Even now, even at 6%, a little bit over 6% now, that's still relatively lower than other loans out there.
Hmm.
Plus, a mortgage is spread out, it's amortized, spread out over 30 years.
Right.
Plus, the interest is simple interest with a mortgage. So you're only paying, like, let's just say your payment is $1,000 a month over 30 years.
Hmm.
Every month you're paying a portion of that is interest and a portion of that is principal, and every month that interest amount goes down. So a mortgage is a very good form, for the most part, it's a good form of debt that you
Hmm.
could actually even leverage that cash in your house to invest in different places. And we've seen
Right.
this a lot where somebody will borrow against like the equity in their house. They'll take
Right.
out the equity in their house and then they'll invest in places in real estate, for example, where they can get like 10%. Let's just say they're buying money at 6% and then
Hmm.
they're selling it at 10%, right? There's a spread, a 4% spread that they're making on their money while keeping their house, while keeping their investments. This is where thinking like a bank comes in, right? Is that you're thinking like a bank. How can I leverage money? So having good credit allows you to do these things. And then an example of bad debt
Yeah.
is credit cards, right? But credit cards are probably the number one example of bad debt. Why? Because the interest rate is really high usually. Like the average, I think, is like 16% as of now, and the interest compounds into the next month. And they typically it's associated with your spending habits, right? So it's very easy to go out and spend thousands of dollars on a credit card, which is very good for the credit card companies because they make a lot of money that way when people are spending. But it's a bad form of debt. You could use credit cards responsibly, but eventually the cost of the interest, the cost of the capital, the cost of the money from a credit card is going to cost you more
Hmm.
than what you're actually making on that money, which will result in it being called bad debt. So
Right.
good debt helps you make money with that. And when you have bad credit, it makes it very difficult to leverage good debt. So I would, and I've seen, I mean, Experian and all these credit bureaus always have all these articles, right, and all these studies that they've done on people with good credit because that's how they make money, right? They study people's behavior, their financial
Hmm.
behaviors, their money behaviors, and they constantly have these articles and publications where they're talking about the people's credit is directly correlated to um, their lifestyle, right? People
Hmm.
have good credit typically have better lifestyles, and vice versa. So it has a big impact on the way you live, your credit. Now, do
Yeah.
I think that that's it? Like if you have bad credit, you can't save? Absolutely not. You could still save. You could still leverage, the things we talked about, crowdfunding. But I would work with somebody to fix it, to help it, because it's going to help your overall your business, your portfolio in the future when you have good credit. It has a direct relationship to the amount of money you make and
Hmm.
the lifestyle you have.
Yeah.
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 Wow, that is so great. I've learned so much today.
Yeah, that's some good information that you shared with us today for sure.
Thank you.
Yes. And our listeners will definitely benefit from everything. So,
Yes.
yeah. So, you want to let everyone know how they can get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to thinkinglikeabank.com. You can check out our podcast. You can check out our YouTube channel, my LinkedIn. You can send an email, schedule an appointment. All of those things you could do from the website, thinkinglikeabank.com. And I'll be more than happy to have a free 15-minute call with you just to kind of get to know you, get to know what you want to do, and to see if we could help you accomplish
Yeah.
some of your financial goals.
Yeah, yeah. I think our listeners will definitely take advantage of that for sure because we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen,
Absolutely.
business owners, people that just want to get to that financial freedom. So I think they'll definitely take full advantage of that for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So, Siri, I just want to say thank you for coming on and spending time with us and sharing some of that knowledge that you have with us. For
Thank
sure.
you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I enjoyed our conversation.
All right, y'all. Did y'all enjoy that episode? Because we did.
Yes.
Okay. So make sure you all check out Siri Abraham at the Bank on Yourself organization. We'll have his website in this link. So we're going to close out today's episode with our takeaway. Today's takeaway quote is from Thurgood Marshall. He says, where you see wrong or inequality or injustice, speak out. Because this is your country. This is your democracy. Make it, protect it, pass it on. Okay? Thurgood Marshall.
Love it.
Yes.
So make sure you guys catch this episode on our YouTube channel, which is Real Conversations with Sheeta and Nikki podcast. Make sure that you go to our Instagram page to catch up with us and see what we're up to, which is Real Conversations 21. Also our Facebook page, which is Real Conversations with Sheeta and Nikki, and also our TikTok, Sheeta and Nikki. And we will see you guys soon.
Peace.